The following is a transcript of a conversation between Matías De Stefano, referred to as me, and his higher self, referred to as I am. 28th January 2021, Fundamentals. Me. Today we were visiting the island of Elephantine in Aswan, walking through the ruins of the ancient capital of southern Egypt in Ptolemaic times, and contemplating the ruins of the temple of Khnum, the ram god of creation. Looking at the foundations, I saw that they were layers upon layers, and it reminded me of all the ancient sites I have visited. Looking around, I could see precarious mud brick houses built on large rocks with hieroglyphics, and some were even covered in layers of dirt and petrified mud. The guide said, the island was reused many times in history. After the earthquakes that destroyed the temple, the invasions came, then the Copts, Muslims, many great floods of the Nile, and the only thing that was left are the foundations of each era. When we visited the oldest sites, we can see that most are in layers, reused, having been reconstructed or covered, as the case may be, either by other cultures, by their own, or by nature. I am. Over time, each culture is reconstructed and uses the foundations of the previous one to build its present. The first rocks that delimited a corral can become part of the foundation of a house. The house can become a temple, and when it collapses, be part of a corral again. Me. Like Egyptian temples, the temples that are visited along the Nile are known to be the wonders of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, and yet this is not the case. These temples are from the Greco-Roman period, in which various kings or regions of the territory incorporated into the Greco-Latin empires ruled over the province of the Nile. However, in pharaonic times, the temples were different, and few remained standing, such as Karnak and Luxor, city of pharaohs. The same stones that were used to generate the Atlantean initiatory path many thousands of years ago were used by the pharaohs for their temples, and their foundations were reused for the Egyptian Greco-Roman temples, after which the fall of the empires became churches, abandoned and covered with sand and mud, while, with the invasion of the Muslims, they were used as kitchens and stables for the animals, which is why they were filled with soot, covering the colorful hieroglyphics in black. On some they built houses or mosques, churches and palaces, or simply the earth covered them, becoming farmland or secrets under the sands. You can see all the uses that have been given to temples and cities over the millennia in the archaeological ruins, as well as in the most recent history. You can see on the walls writings in Greek, Latin, English, Italian, and French, peoples who tried or managed to conquer these lands. And in modernity, each building can become the foundations of another. In Europe, it is very common to see medieval houses or castles converted to modernity, restored with technology and contemporary styles, and at the same time keeping the foundations of the past to the surface on their walls. I remember the first time I went to Rome and observed the Colosseum from the inside, and it struck me that instead of seeing the arena as I imagined from the movies, I saw a network of corridors, like a labyrinth inside. I asked the guide what that was, and he explained that it was under the arena where all things happened. There the artists, the gladiators, those who entertain, kept all their things, their clothes, tools, weapons, animals, and themselves. It was the behind the scenes of the theater, but underground. In turn, I expected to find bleachers, where I could imagine people sitting in the audience, chanting the names of gladiators, and yet I could only see brick arches. It's the foundation that supports the structure, like the bones of the building, he explained. The rest had been broken, fallen, or reused to build other things. What it covers changes, but the fundamentals are the same. I am. That's the key today. Me. Which one? I am. The fundamentals. This word comes from the Latin fundus, which means deep, base, root, bottom, deep. The word mento refers to the instrumental means by which something is performed. Thus, the foundation is what is put underneath and sustains the rest of things. As you said, bones are the foundations of the human physical body, as well as cartilage for fish and some invertebrates. Bones are based on calcium phosphate and accumulate the same calcium for use in the body when needed. They are the structure that supports the rest of the systems of the physical body: cartilage, muscles, nerves, veins, organs. Everything depends on the strength of the bones to keep it together and in order. but they also start from flexibility, since without the joints, the force could not be distributed and the body would collapse. But in turn, bones have a much more important function for life. They are the ones that allow the existence of bone marrow. Me. Isn't that what produces blood? I am. The bone marrow, called bone because it is bone, is a set of stem cells in the form of tissue that originate hematopoietics, the cells that create red blood cells about 500 billion per day. Me. Wow. Many. That's about 62 times the total population of humans today per day. I am. All expanding within you, while thousands and millions die each day. The circulatory and lymphatic system, hand in hand with the immune system, depend on the bone system. Me. The most rigid system is the key to the most fluid system. Paradoxical. I am. Without bones, without structure, without foundation, you would have no bone marrow, and therefore you would have no blood, and without blood you would have no life. To be able to flow, to circulate, to live, you need firm foundations. Cimiento comes from the concept of stone difficult to cut, coming from cedimentum in Latin, originating from the word cadere, to cut. It is similar to the word sedimentum, which means what is sitting at the base. Both define minerals, materials that are located at the bottom, holding what flows on the surface, whether river, sea, plants, animals, populations. But referring to foundation, we find an interesting key. What leads us to flow is what keeps us static. Me. What would that look like? I am. Let's go to the description of the universe. And then we'll go to easy examples. Remember that we have talked about that the whole cosmos is actually a single fixed static point, and that of itself everything vibrates, projecting, which gives a sense of polarity, and this generates movement. Every cosmic universal existence is nothing more than a constant movement born from a fixed point. Now let's analyze it from the point of view of time. A clock. It arises from the idea of showing the shadow of a pillar projected by the sun on a semicircular surface, which allows to measure the hours with marks on the edges and thus identify the moments. The pillar is something fixed in space and time, but because everything around it moves, it allows you to see the passage of time. Later, it was understood that the same measurement could be made during the night, making a semicircle, a circle in which the needles tied to a fixed center move, showing the flow of time in a conceptual way. You wouldn't be able to identify the passage of time without a physical reference point, whether it's a clock, a tree, a pillar, or yourself. The same goes for space. You can understand the movement of things thanks to the North Star, which, being fixed, allows you to recognize the directions of space, just as the Earth rotates on its own axis, its own center, to which all things are attracted. Me. I understand. The reference of all things that move in existence can only be given by a fixed point. The universe is only a fixed point projected on the outside, generating the sensation of order that we call cosmos. I am. That's right. And since the universe is mind, it is conceptual, that fixed point is the I am. In this way, just as in the world projected to the external and manifested in matter, structures are needed so that the flow of life can arise. The same will happen in the concepts of the mind, where the point of reference is oneself. Me. Self-reference. I am. And this is how you can evolve, having an internal reference point, a compass that indicates the point of center and direction, and that allows you to always return to your personal north, even if you decide to navigate or walk through remote places of the world. Me. Those are the fundamentals of a person. I am. The deepest concepts that make up the basis of a being. What is a person? Me. A mask, from the Greek prosopon, used in Greek theaters so that the actor and actress could make themselves heard to the audience, showing the emotion of the moment. I am. That is, the person, the individual, are not real. They are just a mask of something real that is below. Just as you observed in the Colosseum, what the audience saw in the battle arena was not the real thing, That was the theater set up for the show. The real thing was under the arena, behind the scenes, what nobody saw. Every week there was a different and unique show, but underneath everything remained the same. Buildings, architecture, the passage of time and the reconstruction and reuse of them by various cultures, philosophies, religions, activities, is similar, if not equal, to how people function. For the universe, there are no individuals, but aspects of the same being that, like the stem cells in the bone marrow, multiply, creating thousands and millions. Thus, each clan, each ethnic group, each group or species has built the foundations based on the foundations of collective consciousness, building paths that everyone has to travel, and individuals are those diversities, different ways of achieving the same thing. So, for example, the foundations of your life have been based on the Italian and Basque vision, and generation after generation, your ancestors, your grandparents, parents, and now you have been adding something new, something special, a new layer, decoration, bricks, paintings to this building. But the foundations remain the same. Perhaps covered by mud, sand, grass, perhaps ignored and yet to be discovered, perhaps open, in the open air, like wounds that I do not know how to repair, like an open museum or an unfinished construction for lack of architect. Every time someone new comes to inhabit the house, they will make a change in it, but the fundamentals will still be there. Me. The question is who laid the foundations and whether they are good or not. I am. Therein lies the question, yes, but to know the answer, you have to recognize the foundations, look for them, know what are the fixed foundations of the family, of the culture, of the clan, one's own. What you are looking for in your life is usually the north marked by the oldest ancestors who began the search. Why do you think so many humans share the same interests? Me. Because we had common ancestors. Today we are 8 billion humans, when 12,000 years ago we were about 1 million. So from a very small number of ancestors arose many individuals. And if the foundations were laid 12,000 years ago, that implies that, if half were women, at least 16,000 humans shared the same common ancestor. And if the majority lived in communities, the same conflicts and needs were shared, being that if each tribe had an average of 50 people, perhaps fundamental conflicts and skills are shared in groups of 160 million humans. It's incredible, exponential, and at the same time simplified. It helps to understand how so many humans share the same origins and destinies of life, so many people working the same traumas and purposes. I am. In the same way that a house or temple is rebuilt and redecorated for thousands of years by each new tenant, and their children enlarge it, decorate it, break it, cover it, reuse it, modernize it, and so on, your bodies are the same. Your genetics are evolutionary and changing, but anchored in an original fixed point on which everything revolves around you. Me, the foundation. On this stone I will build my temple. The foundation stone, the cornerstone, the first brick, the first idea, the first creation, the first belief. I am. The origin has marked your destiny, as in an axis, in a pole. The appearance of a south immediately generates a north. Your north flows on the axis of your south, and the south moves on the axis of your north. Destiny only makes sense thanks to origin. The end is understood only by a beginning. The foundations, the structures, are key to your evolution, to your movement. The reason why you interpret them as an impediment is because you are not clear about your north, and you consider that you cannot advance because of the weight of your past. Actually, this is not the case. It is by knowing and acknowledging, by honoring the past, that you develop your future. Me. Yes, I have experienced it in my own skin, because everything I achieve is because of my reference of 12,000 years ago, and what I have done in this life I owe to recognize the history of my close ancestors. I am. The primary intention gives meaning to your existence. The blood that flows in you is produced in the rocks that built the first home your clan has ever lived. Me. And what if the foundation is painful? I am. No one first built a home thinking about killing or controlling. All homes began with the intention of caring, of belonging. It is later that in the context it is reconstructed to dominate. It goes through all the arrangements and decorations, reconstructions, and looks at the roots for the foundations. Therein lies the foundation of your life and existence. Me. Can I found something new? I am. That is a foundation. The action of putting a new foundation. You can generate it, but only when you have recognized the home you inhabit can build your own home. Me. Today is full moon in Leo, and I feel that this is key today because I recognize that my foundations of life arise in the age of Leo, 12,000 years ago, here in Egypt, in Chem, and that to build this new house in Aquarius, of freedom, innovation, expansion, it is necessary to recognize my fundamentals of structure, of pyramidality, of law. I am. It is the foundation of Leo with its attributes and defects, its longings and potentials, which will show you the key to dancing free in the skies of Aquarius. Recognize the fundamentals of your being. Remember Shu. And being her, you can discover what it is to be you today, to be Matías. Me. The past lives in me, in my bones, and it is they, their structure, who create the blood that flows in me, that gives life to my current being, and I am the mask in this scene of the great work, and I must make my role a good character for all those who make up the body that I am, and liberate them in the art of being. I am. Face your rigid old structures, but instead of breaking them to build something new and subtle, rebuild them, use them to sustain heaven on earth.